The countryside always seemed like the safest place, far from the noise and chaos of the cities. Rolling fields stretched endlessly, dotted with small cottages where families had lived for generations. In one particular village, everyone knew each other by name, and every door remained unlocked. People trusted their neighbors, and disputes were usually settled with a handshake rather than an argument. It was the kind of place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. But in the summer of 2025, that illusion was shattered. It began quietly, with the disappearance of an elderly farmer who had spent his life tending to his crops. At first, his absence was brushed off. Perhaps he had gone to visit relatives or taken a trip without telling anyone. But as days turned into weeks, his empty farmhouse stood as a silent warning. Not long after, a young schoolteacher vanished after leaving her classroom one evening. Her bicycle was found leaning against a fence near the village boundary, as if she had simply walked away. By the time a third villager, a local shopkeeper, went missing, panic began to spread. What unsettled everyone most was the eerie similarity in the cases. None of the homes showed signs of a struggle. Belongings were untouched, meals left half-prepared, and doors unlocked. It was as though each person had stepped out for a moment and never returned. Rumors swept across the countryside. Some said it was the work of outsiders, while others whispered about old grudges buried deep in the village's past. The most chilling detail, however, was that each missing person had last been spotted near the same abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of town, a place most villagers avoided and children dared each other to approach. What was once dismissed as a harmless ruin was now the center of growing fear. The farmhouse stood at the very edge of the village, surrounded by overgrown weeds and a rusting iron gate that leaned crookedly on its hinges. Its windows were broken, its roof sagged, and the walls carried decades of rot and neglect. For years, it had been the subject of stories told around firesides, tales of its former owners who had died mysteriously, and of strange figures seen moving in the fields at night. Most people avoided the place, dismissing it as bad luck, but with 3 villagers missing, the farmhouse could no longer be ignored. When investigators entered, the air was thick with dust and silence. The rooms were stripped bare, with only broken furniture left behind. But in the kitchen, they noticed something strange. The floorboards were loose, covered hastily with dirt and straw. Pulling them up revealed a hidden entrance that led to a narrow staircase descending into darkness. What they found beneath the farmhouse was nothing like the villagers expected. The underground tunnel stretched far, twisting like veins through the earth. Old lanterns still burned faintly, proving the place had been used recently. On the walls, investigators found strange markings, maps of surrounding lands, and pages filled with coded writing. Some of the papers dated back decades, suggesting the farmhouse had been more than a family home. It had been a base of operations, carefully concealed beneath the ground. The deeper they went, the more unsettling the discoveries became. A locked chamber contained boxes of old photographs and ledgers filled with names of villagers, some crossed out in red ink. There were also tools, restraints, and signs that people had been held there against their will. What had once been dismissed as a crumbling relic of the past was now revealed as a hidden heart of something sinister, something that had been thriving in the shadows of the countryside for years. The investigation into the missing villagers grew darker when connections began to surface between the victims. Each of them had been outspoken in local disputes over farmland, arguing against powerful families who wanted to expand their control over the countryside. At first, the idea that these conflicts could be tied to something so sinister seemed impossible. But the evidence hidden in the farmhouse tunnels told a different story. Maps outlined areas of land ownership, and documents revealed heated disagreements over property lines stretching back generations. What appeared to be ordinary rural arguments had, in truth, fueled something much larger. Slowly, a hidden network began to emerge. Investigators uncovered references to a group calling themselves the Circle, a secret society made up of landowners, wealthy farmers, and even officials who were sworn to protect the village. The Circle operated quietly, using intimidation, blackmail, and threats to silence anyone who stood in their way. The missing villagers had not simply vanished, they had become targets. As the pieces came together, the scale of the conspiracy became chillingly clear. The farmhouse was more than a meeting point. It was a fortress where plans were made and dissenters were dealt with. Records detailed secret gatherings, the transfer of money, and coded instructions for punishing those who resisted. Even more disturbing, Some of the names in the ledgers belonged to respected community members who had never been suspected of wrongdoing. The circle thrived by blending into everyday life, their true intentions hidden behind warm smiles and neighborly gestures. For years, they had operated without suspicion, weaving themselves into the very fabric of the countryside. The missing villagers were not the first to challenge them, but they had made the mistake of pushing too far. And for the circle, betrayal of their power had only one outcome. As investigators continued to unravel the truth, the conspiracy spread further than anyone could have imagined. It was not just the wealthy landowners who played their part, but also those who held positions of trust within the village. Teachers, shopkeepers, and even a priest were named in the documents, each one contributing to the circle's power in subtle ways. Some provided information about villagers who questioned authority, others laundered money through local businesses, and a few simply looked the other way when violence was carried out. The community that had once seemed tightly bound by loyalty was revealed to be a web of betrayal. The discoveries in the fields surrounding the village only deepened the horror. Beneath layers of soil, shallow graves were uncovered, their remains too old to identify easily. It became evident that this network had been operating for decades, silencing dissenters whenever they threatened to expose the truth. Each grave was a reminder of how far the circle was willing to go to preserve its control. Yet, what unsettled investigators most was the realization that these crimes had been hidden in plain sight, disguised as accidents, natural deaths, or disappearances no one dared question. Financial records linked to the circle painted an equally disturbing picture. Bribes had been passed to officials who should have protected the community, ensuring that no investigation gained momentum. Blackmail had kept others in line, with private secrets recorded in careful detail. Every villager who thought they were safe had unknowingly been under surveillance, their weaknesses catalogued and ready to be used against them. By the time the full extent of the conspiracy came into focus, it was clear that the countryside was not a place of innocence but a carefully constructed facade. The betrayal was not just in the crimes themselves, but in the trusted faces that had orchestrated them from the very beginning. The final act of the conspiracy unfolded on a stormy night when authorities launched a raid on the abandoned farmhouse. For weeks they had been gathering enough evidence to act, but nothing could prepare them for what they were about to uncover. Armed teams moved through the tunnels, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, revealing rooms that had long been hidden from the outside world. In one chamber, chained and weak, they found a man who had been missing for months. He was barely alive, but his survival was nothing short of miraculous. His testimony would soon expose the deepest secrets of the circle. From his account, investigators learned how the circle operated in absolute silence, luring victims into the farmhouse before deciding their fate. He had been spared only because his captors argued over how useful he might be. His knowledge of land ownership disputes had bought him time, but the torment he endured was beyond comprehension. His words confirmed suspicions that others had been held there before him, many of whom never escaped. The raid led to a wave of arrests that shocked the countryside. Respected farmers, business owners, and community leaders were taken away in handcuffs. Their double lives were exposed, leaving the village reeling with disbelief. People who had once been trusted to guide the community were revealed as architects of its darkest crimes. The circle, which had thrived in secrecy for generations, was dismantled piece by piece. Yet the damage left behind could not be undone. Families still mourned those who never returned, and the scars of betrayal ran deep. The countryside, once seen as a safe haven, was forever marked by the conspiracy. The case became a chilling reminder that evil does not always come from strangers. It can grow silently among those we trust the most.